Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Nursing Uncharted. I'm your host, Anne. Today, I know I say this a lot, but I'm really excited about today's episode because I met this guest in the craziest way. I'll let her introduce herself and then we'll kind of share how we've met each other. So go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Laurel and I'm a nurse. I graduated in 2012, got my BSN. My background has been kind of in cardiac CCU. That's how I grew up. And then I started travel nursing around 2017, and I've been sort of on and off doing that for the past several years. And through a travel company, my recruiter knew Anne, and I just got this message one day saying, "Hey, I know this woman who does a podcast about nursing and traveling, and I think you guys might hit it off. Can I give her your number?" And I said, "Sure." So, and we did.
I know, and
Yeah.
I think our first conversation was close to an hour and a half, and it was
Yes.
just meant to touch base and get to know each other. And then, I think we just got carried away and
Yeah.
realized we're destined to be friends.
Yeah. It was perfect because we were both like, "Do you have 15 minutes? Just a quick check in, sort of a business as
Yeah.
usual." And then it just blossomed into, yeah,
Yeah, and I
all
love
of
that.
this.
That's why I'm so excited for this because you have shared some really inspiring things with me and a different way of looking at traveling, but also life in general. So
Oh,
that's what I'm most excited about for you to share that with everyone else because I've taken something away from that and I think everyone else will too. So I start this podcast out by asking everyone what their passion is in life and in nursing. So what do you feel your passion is?
I feel like my passion is life itself, is actually the living of life. And you know, I think a few years ago, if you'd asked me this question, I would have answered in activities like my hobbies or this is what I like to do. But what I realized is underlying all that is I just really love the experience of being alive and, going to new places, meeting new people, but really and I've also found a lot of joy in simpler moments that usually people wouldn't be able to answer that question. What's your passion? Well, my passion is those moments at the grocery store where you don't know someone, but help them with their groceries and you share smiles and you have a really sweet moment. So I think just life itself, the big things, the small things is my greatest passion at this point.
Yes, and something that you mentioned in just a conversation is like fostering that joy, the joy of
Yeah.
life, right? And that
Yeah.
I think that as nurses and human beings, I think in general, we lose sight of the joys. And just like you said, the little joys,
Yeah.
going to the grocery store and helping someone and just what you get from helping that person. I just
Yeah.
think that we lose sight of that. And that's a big thing that I took away from our personal conversation was just you you reminded me how important
Mm.
it is to have those moments of joy celebrated and recognized.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. So what does joy mean to you? Obviously, you kind of touched on that a little bit, but what does that
Yeah.
ultimately mean? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. So my joy journey, if you could call it, like because I didn't always have the perspective I do today, is um, rewind a few years. I was working, in cardiac unit, and I'd been a nurse for maybe 5 or 6 years, and I met another nurse named Caroline Cardenas, and she was a nurse. She was an amazing human, and she actually was the first person that I heard speak about joy in a way of fostering it and promoting it and protecting it, and as a way to enhance the experience of being a nurse or to kind of help us. She got her master's degree doing research in using like hoop dance and play therapy to combat burnout and compassion fatigue, which I think is something anyone who's been in a hospital for more than 20 minutes can, relate to that
Yeah.
sense of you love it, but it takes a lot, right? We give a lot, but it takes a lot. And so I connected with her through a project at work, and she just had this perspective on joy that changed the way I saw things. And so from there, I started looking at because I realized I hadn't really asked myself, well, what brings me joy? And what is joy? And there's I'm going to say that word a lot, just by the way, because there's something called the Book of Joy, and it's actually a conversation between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, and it's a book, and they made a documentary about it. And the way they define it is interesting because they talk about joy not as a fleeting emotion, but as a state of being and as something that isn't really happiness or sadness, but it's more characterized by calmness and contentment. And so for me, when I talk about those moments of going to the grocery store, being open for those connections, for me, living in a way that, well, what fosters my joy? I mean, just on the basics, I can do things like rest is a big one, yoga, exercise, being with friends, beautiful conversations, meeting new people. So making sure that I'm living in a way where there's space for the things that bring me joy or allow me to be in that state of being. Because when I do practice those on a regular basis, I'm available for life in a way that I'm not when I don't. I'm available to smile at someone at the grocery store or to notice that maybe someone's struggling with their cart and I could help them, versus if I'm not, because I can get as burnt out as anyone else. And then I'm just in the like, I've got to do 10 things and everyone's in my way. And, the stress and the anxiety, it's almost like blinders coming down. So for me, joy, practicing joy and fostering joy is really about kind of the bedrock of where am I living from, and what is it like the state of being that I'm in.
Yeah. And I just love how deep that is. We use these words in our everyday life and just in casual conversations like, oh, what brings you joy? But the way that you've figured out how to look at it, it really impacts how you live your life and how you impact other people and how your joy is received from someone else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I got that from you talking to you the first time, like it was a business conversation per se,
Yeah.
and it wasn't that at all with us. And that's that's what I remember most about that. And I look forward to the conversations because your joy that you feel and that you're living is like beaming off of you through the phone, through a video conversation, and I receive it. And I think that it's just so important as a nurse, especially,
Yeah.
but also as a person.
Yeah.
Just you can always tell by someone's energy, how
Right.
are they approachable, are they not? But just to
Yeah.
be able to receive that happiness and that joy from someone else can just change someone's terrible day.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And to
It's
be able
so
to do that
true.
as a nurse is amazing, and I think that I love that, and I'm so glad you were able to share that, and, I mean, you said it in a different way than what we've ever talked
Right.
about before, so I'm just like, "Oh,
Oh, oh,
I'm taking from that too."
oh, same
And
stuff.
something, that we touched on a little bit in previous conversations were the risks that you have to take almost
Yeah.
to get that joy, right?
Yeah.
And like what that looks like. So I think travel nursing in general is a big risk. But
Dude.
what are those risks that you take to help with that burnout? And what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, again, sort of my entry point into it was through, my friend and teacher mentor, Caroline. She was when I met her, she was teaching body play, basically hula hoop dancing for nurses, as a way of playing and being in your body. And her website actually I think is thecircleofplay.com, which I just love. Is
I love that.
she just basically was like, you got to play, you got to have joy. And so I started with, again, I can be so okay, I've got to play. I better take this seriously. I got to get 2 hours of play in every day. So, but it sounds silly, but I was so, kind of stiff at the time that I made a play practice part of my life. And doing that and setting aside that time literally just to do nothing that had any benefit to anyone else. It wasn't going to get me a degree. It wasn't going to advance my career. It really was just this sort of sacred time of, I'm going to go play like I am 5 years old right now. And from that, having that, I felt like I developed the courage to take the risks because there was I mean, as silly as it sounds, just that very basic, maybe human fear of people are going to laugh at me, right? Sort of going to a park or with my little hula hoops, as a 30-year-old, some woman, and am I ridiculous? Is this, can I do this? Am I allowed? So I had to sort of break through all these barriers in my own mind to play. And then once I began to play, and that became like, that's a non-negotiable thing for me anymore. And I'm not ashamed that that's a part of my life. It almost opened me up to what else would I do if I wasn't afraid? I mean, that was
Yeah.
really kind of like, and then from there, I thought, well, gosh, I've really always wanted to travel nurse. And then, that litany of what about this and what about that? And all of these reasons why not to. But that courage that not just fostering it, but when you practice on a regular basis, it was almost like there was this thing inside of me that was like, no, we can do this. We're going to be okay. That's going to be fine. And so I had this kind of, this courage that I found through the play practice to really just identify what I wanted, know that it scared me, and be willing to do it anyways. Because I think that's the thing about risk taking. For me, at least, the things that excite me, the risk taking that excites me, also on some level terrifies me. And
Oh
so
yeah.
finding that balance, right? We talked about this in our
Yeah.
conversations of like, should I just pack my car and drive all the way across the country to a place I've never been?
Yeah.
And like you
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting about, for me, also back to this idea of this joy and this state of being and the courage we can find through that, you know, there are things that like someone could have said to you, well, and these are all the reasons why it shouldn't work out. Or me, well, when I left to go traveling, I had a very secure, stable job. There was a pension. There were all these reasons on paper why maybe it wasn't a good idea. And that may be true in the world, but it wasn't my truth. Right. And that is like,
Mhm.
people can tell you, well, what about this and what about that? You're right. It's true that maybe you'll get a flat tire in the middle of nowhere. That may be true, but your truth was calling you somewhere, and you followed that. And so I think, again, the more we can kind of figure out what brings us joy, because it's different for everyone, and really live from that place, then we have the courage to take the risks and follow our own truth.
Yeah. I just thinking back, this is crazy because we didn't talk about this before, but when I first started travel nursing,
Yeah.
um, AMN actually asked me to submit some videos like years ago of
Oh,
just,
wow.
when the passport app came out
Oh,
and
yeah.
people were sharing their experience and like what is one piece of advice. Your conversation, my brain just went off on a tangent because I remember sitting on the bed of some stranger's house on a
Yeah.
travel assignment,
Yeah.
telling new nurses thinking about traveling to take risks. And I
Oh, I
forgot
love
about that
that.
until right now.
Oh, I love
So it's
that.
just like, it's so crazy that we say, like, I could tell someone else that, but I forgot about that. And I need to
Yeah.
remind myself that it's still important to take risks, even though I feel like I took the biggest risk of my life. And, our stories are similar. I mean, obviously we have different purposes,
Yeah.
different reasons why we did it, but, we both are on different sides of the country right
Yeah.
now, but we
Yeah.
started on the opposite side of the country
Yes.
than what we are right now. And we both took that risk to go, and I
Yeah.
think that you forget. I
Yeah.
mean, I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
I forget about that. I forget
Yeah.
that I did that, and you saying about risk taking, it's like, "Oh my gosh," like, I have to kinda dial back and dig deep and be like, "No, I did that. I can
Yeah.
do this. I can
Yeah.
continue to take those risks," and I think that risk taking, and you touched on this a little bit with like the burnout of
Yeah.
the monotony that I mean, nursing is very different day to
Yeah.
day, but in the end, sometimes it can really feel like a hamster wheel that you
Yeah.
cannot get out of.
Yeah.
And, I love this whole hula hoop in Central Park. Like, who
Yes.
who would do that? Some crazy, like, homeless person, maybe, but like a well-educated, established nurse just hula hooping, but that,
Yeah.
you know, doing that just frees you and,
Yeah.
just opens you up to
Yeah.
take even more risk. And I love that. I just
Yeah.
the way of looking at this, I think, is so important, and I'm so excited for viewers and listeners to hear this and truly take what you're saying to heart and like really analyze your own joy because I love that, and
Yeah.
it's really it's changed my life a little bit just since I've met you.
Oh,
I've
oh,
become a lot more in tune to people's like energies almost.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that that's that giving and receiving and being open to other
yeah,
people's joy. And
yeah.
I love that. And I always mess this up. So I'm
Oh,
just going to let you say it, but something that I loved were these little adventures that you went on and a friend of yours named.
yes. So I went on, what actually love about it is I called them wonder walks. Like, and then I think when you and I were talking, you thought I said like, wander walking.
Wonder
And
Walk.
then I realized that it was actually all of it. Cause basically the premise of it was I was in a new place. I was in San Francisco, in a new city, and I was working as a travel nurse and I had a lot of time. And I remember just one day saying to myself, I'm going to wander. I'm going to walk outside with no destination in mind, having no agenda whatsoever. And I am going to wander around the city until I find something that fills me with a sense of wonder. So that was, but basically, I was like, and again, that's not like that's kind of not how people that's never going to be in a day planner, right? Like
Yeah.
wander until you find like all these things, because I feel like we live in this society that's so production, like, are you doing, is it a task, or what are you making? And I just was in a space of, I need spaciousness, and I just want to go find something beautiful, basically. So I would wander around the city, and then I just start taking pictures. Like, I mean, and San Francisco is a very colorful city. I mean that in all the ways, but there's
Yeah.
actually literally these beautiful old Victorian houses that people have like painted these beautiful bright colors, and there's murals on the side. And so sometimes I'd just be walking, and then there would be this gorgeous mural, and I'd just stop and be like, wow. And this kind of came through in our conversation too. Part of the thing about taking risks, and part of what fills me with a sense of joy and gratitude, is there are these little moments where I would be standing there looking at something and realizing, if I hadn't left home, I would never have seen this moment where, the sun is shining, or this beautiful, I've got a nice chai in my hand, and I just came around the corner and there's this beautiful mural. I would have missed this, right? If I hadn't taken that risk to leave home. And so I nicknamed them, like my friend would be like, what are you doing? Are you wonder walking today? And, and then we just called it WW, and, I'd send
Yeah.
her photos. And so, but yeah, it was again, that idea. I mean, one of the things that is at this point a necessity for me after, nursing and all of that, because it's so if you didn't chart it, it didn't happen to me. You've got to really be on point, is to allow myself just spaciousness, a day where it's like, I don't have to get anything done for the next 2 hours. There's no agenda. There's no goal. I'm just going to walk around the world like I just got here and see what I can find. Right. And so that became one of the practices. And then like I was telling you, I loved it so much that every city I went to after that, I would sort of like block a day. Like, okay, after orientation, all right, next Wednesday, I'm going to go wonder walking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love too, like this doesn't always it doesn't have to apply to just like being a travel nurse.
Correct.
You know,
Yeah.
you had said because I'm in San Diego. You're
Yeah.
currently in New York, as
Yeah.
your lovely sign says behind
Yeah.
you. But you're from San Diego. This
Yes.
is
I
where
grew up there.
you
Yep.
yeah, this is where you're from. And before you even started travel nursing, didn't you say that there were like travel nurse groups or travel nurses that were working in your hospital that almost inspired you to get
Yeah.
out and explore where you live and you
Yeah.
didn't realize the things that were here?
Yeah. I mean, well, and that was what was so great about when we were talking and realizing that, you were in this place that was this new, amazing, environment you'd chosen. And when I grew up there, I was working as a staff nurse, and I met this group of travelers, and all they did was they just had fun, because they were
Yeah.
like, we're in the city for 3 months and we're just going to have all the fun. And they
Yeah.
did things, and I didn't even know I could do in the city I grew up in. They were like, do you want to go pontoon boating next weekend? I was like, what is a pontoon boat and where do you find one? And they're like, oh no, there's these boats and you can get one and we go around the bay. And I was like, well, that sounds amazing. Or
Yeah.
do you want to rent kayaks and go sea kayaking with us? Can I? And that was when I realized that while I lived in this city, that was what I meant about the blinders. I actually lived
Yeah.
in this gorgeous city, in this very narrow, I went to work, I did my groceries. Again, that kind of prescribed. I did my laundry, I flossed my teeth, I made
Yeah.
sure I went to the gym. You kind of this regimented way. And these people were, because their time there was so short, it was precious to them, right? And every day they had off, they just wanted to explore and find things that brought them joy and,
Yeah.
do all these fun things. And I spent a few weeks with them and I realized, I thought, wow, it's almost like I've never seen the city that I grew up in. So
Yeah.
yeah, having that perspective, I mean, I think it's so easy for us to get those blinders on
It is.
and it is just sort of stepping outside, even if it's in the city you live in and you think, I'm going to go to a place that I've always wanted, a part of town I've wanted to see but haven't gone to, and I'm just going to walk around and see what's there,
Yeah. And that's a risk. This all ties together because it's a risk.
Totally.
It's hard to do things alone. Like some people are so good at
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
I struggle with that. It's
Yeah.
always like, well, there's no one here. Like, what am I going to do? But,
Yeah.
having to put a big girl pants on and go out there and walk around,
Yeah.
the stuff that you miss by not taking a risk and you could miss beautiful things. And like you
Right.
said, the blinders. So, I love that even before you started travel nursing, travel nurses inspired you
Yes.
to to explore your
Right.
own hometown.
Yeah. And just that idea of how you see the world when you know that your time
Is
is is finite.
yeah,
Because I know that I tend to think in terms of like, this is how it is and forever will be, right? We just, versus that idea of, gosh, I'm not here for such a very long time. And how do I want to spend that time? But you also brought up something that I love in what you just said, which is that risk can look so different. And that was part of our earlier
yeah,
conversations about it doesn't have to look like being a nurse or even traveling. It can be little things like, should I go out, hiking by myself or do an activity or, I think the thing with risk for all of us, at least for me, is there's always a threshold, right? Of, ooh, I'm a little afraid to cross that threshold because I'm not sure what's on the other side. And it can be even having a conversation with someone, right? Or just, it can be little things. But I think the more we step across those thresholds and take those risks, whether they're, big, like, well, by big, involve changing addresses and,
yeah.
or they're just, going to a place you've never been in the city you live in. Yeah. It's,
Can we? Am I allowed to talk
you
about the
totally
risk
are. I was actually,
that you
yeah,
took?
I was right there. Yeah. Speaking of doing things alone that
Speaking
make you
of,
feel awkward.
but I love this story because of what it also brought to the bedside and just like
Yeah.
being a nurse. And I just recorded an episode where I talk about the difficulties and the challenges as a new nurse communicating,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and just I think about how I was and who I am now, and I'm like,
Yeah.
who the heck is that other person? And
Yeah.
I just think that this is something that maybe some new nurses could do this because
That would be
it
amazing.
will help
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Yes.
So
So,
please tell us what you did while you were in New York.
oh my gosh. So I was in New York and I signed up to take an improv class at a theater. And I didn't even really know what that meant. I just knew that it sounded like fun. And I think I had a friend maybe who'd done improv or, sometimes, at least for me, when it's like when you're being silly with your friends and you're talking in goofy voices and she's like, oh, you should do improv. It's just like doing that. You just kind of like play pretend and it's really fun and silly. And I was like, oh, that's fun. And then I went on this website and I was like, oh my God, wait, this involves like going to a part of town I don't know, like, wait, what? And so, but again, I was here on a contract that was ending. And so I sort of had that, like, you don't have much time here, right? Because in a few months you won't have access to this. So long and short of it is I signed up for this 4-day intro to improv class. And oh my gosh, I mean, talk about a fish out of water. I am not an actress or an actor or in the theater. And so I went to this class. It's this theater. There's all these different levels. I'm walking up and down, sort of like, where am I going? And I found the room, and then everyone's going around the room. Introduce yourself, say why you're there, and there's maybe 15 people, and one was like, well, I'm in film and television, but I'm trying to do more theater. And my acting coach said that improv is a great way to do it. Like they all had very reasonable reasons to be there, right? Like, yes, this is your career. And I was just standing there. I was like, my name's Laurel, and I'm a nurse, and I want more joy in my life, or something like. I felt like the kid, when you're five, you start a new class in school, and they were like, okay, all right, well, here we go. And, at first you're sort of like, what are we doing? And then, but it was so much fun because it was basically, we just played make believe for the next few days. And then the teacher would be like, okay, you're a zebra, go stand in the corner and be a zebra. And, it's like, what? But then after a
How
couple
do I
days,
be a zebra?
right, like, wait, zebra, what does a zebra do? And then after a couple days, I'm just like, hey, I could be an elephant. It was like it's almost like a part of your
Yeah.
brain switches again because you're in this
Yeah.
space, and you have someone kind of guiding you, and you're doing these sketches, they call them. And what was, I could feel it change me after a few days. I was like, wow, that was really fun. That was a lot of play. And also, it's possible. I think that's the other thing is, it wasn't this, ooh, I kind of want to do that, but it scares me, so I probably shouldn't. Or again, maybe I'll wait until I have 2 or 3 friends that
Yeah.
want to do it with me,
Mhm.
and then we'll be a group, and then I'll feel safer. And what was beautiful about that is it sort of left me with this sense of levity and lightness. And I was able to go back into my work as a nurse and be a little bit more light with people. And because I think when you were saying about being a new grad, I think, I don't know if we all feel this. I think we all do. I know I did, is you so want people to feel safe with you and know
Yeah.
that you're like, I'm qualified to be here. I went to
Yeah.
school. I passed the NCLEX. I know what I'm doing. But you also kind of don't, because you're new, right? It's this super awkward, like,
Yeah.
I know as much as I can, but I'm still gonna, I wanted to get it right so badly. And so for me, there was almost this, like, I'm going to be super professional. I am super professional nurse lady. And now after, I've been doing this for a dozen years, but especially after that class, I let myself be a little more goofy in obviously the appropriate places. You got to,
Right.
know,
Right.
know your audience. But,
Yes.
there are ways in which when I do that, people play back, right? People will, oh yeah, or if you make a joke, someone will joke back with you. Like there's ways, I think, also that it humanizes you, because then people realize, oh, you are my nurse and you know what you're doing, but you're also a person, right? And you're
Yeah.
also a human being. And I think there's a fundamental safety that allows us to feel, because then there isn't that distance of, I'm over here in this role and you're over there. I'm the nurse and you're
Right.
the patient. It's like, we're people,
Yeah.
you could be me, I could be you in 10 years, right? We're
Right.
here together as humans. And
And
you mentioned
and the
that,
trust, like the trust
and the
that.
trust that
Yeah.
builds.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I love that because literally the last episode that I just recorded, I remember being this like child that would hide from people when they said hi to me. And now I'm like,
Oh,
"Hi, I'm
yeah.
Ann. I'm on a podcast. Come talk to me."
Right.
It's just
Hello.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just and I think that this is all just so important as a nurse. We're talking about life in general, obviously,
Yeah.
when we talk about this, but
Yeah.
you know, as a nurse, being a human
Being a human.
above anything,
That's right.
if you as a nurse, as a new nurse, if you can even just take that away from this, being
Yeah.
human and realizing you're a human being and
Yep.
as is your patient,
That's
you
right.
know, that can just kind of put you on the same level and you can have those conversations.
Yeah.
You can be yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that that's at least like, well, for me, I deal with babies. You deal with
Yeah.
adults, I deal with
Yeah.
babies. So I could do whatever the heck I wanted to at the babies. Half the time, my staff, like I own them, my my colleagues will
Yeah.
walk by and they're like, "And who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "Well, the
Oh,
baby."
I'm
And they're like,
talking to
"Yeah,
the
but you're just like
baby. Yeah.
telling them like your day? And I'm like, well, I'm just supposed to come in here and not say anything.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
funny that like I'll just have these conversations with the babies, but then,
Yeah.
I have to talk to the parents, and,
Yeah.
it's just bringing the joy,
Yeah.
bringing the human aspect of that joy, and also, allowing there's difficult conversations that happen,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's okay to break that tense
Yeah.
scenario with a little
Yeah.
lightheartedness.
Yeah.
Knowing when it's appropriate
Right.
is a
Exactly.
learning curve for people,
Right.
but,
Yeah.
just I think I really like the idea of an improv class. Would I ever do that? Probably not. I don't think I'm brave enough. I think you're extremely brave for doing
Oh,
that. I really, really do, but I love what you've gained from that.
yeah.
I'm sure it's changed you and your
Yeah.
everyday life too, but I think
Well,
it's just
and
go
sorry,
ahead.
I was just what you're saying is now my mind is going. This is why we end up on the phone for an hour and a half. Well, so when you were talking about being human and just that staying human and staying connected and talking to your patient, I take care of sometimes adults who are in profound catatonic states, comas, whatever. I always introduce myself. I
Yeah.
always introduce myself, even if they're,
Aw.
vented and pegged and trached and whatever. Hi, I'm going to be your nurse today. I'll be taking care of. I explain what I'm doing, because I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. And the other part is, you know, the thing I think that for me, the thing about joy and play, and this was something Carolyn taught me that was so important. This was kind of at the root of her work about the reason why it can help with burnout, compassion fatigue, is we witness so much suffering in nursing and in the hospital. There is so much that happens that is heartbreaking, and that
Yeah.
we can try as hard as we can to do, make our patients better, and they don't always get better, right? And so being able to stay human in the face of that, I think is the most profound gift of having practices that foster your joy, because it also allows you to stay connected to, for me, it allows me to stay connected to my emotions and my heart, which is not an easy thing to do. You made me think of a patient the other day that it was it was her mom. So basically, my patient was dying of cancer, just
Yeah.
and quickly within like a month ago, find cancer everywhere.
Wow.
She's dying. And her daughter was at the bedside. And we were at the point where there was literally nothing left that we could do. And I just tried to, is there anything I can get you? And she just looked at me and she took her mom's hand and she kissed it. And then she held it to her cheek and she said, she's my mom. And in that moment, medically, there's like the oncologist had come, all the doctors, all the treatments. As a medical professional, there's nothing more I have to offer you. But as a human, and I
Yeah.
looked at her and all I had, but and I didn't look away. I looked at her and I said, I have a mom too. And I'm so sorry for what's happening. And she started crying. I started crying,
Yeah.
and
You're
then,
making me cry.
I know, I was like, I know, it's like, as I started telling her, hold
Yeah.
it together, hold it together. Because, it was, but in that moment, and to me, that is part of why I will always, as long as I do this work, do everything silly and playful outside, is because it keeps me human and it keeps me open to that. Because, and then she just, you know, I put my hand on her shoulder and she kind of went in for the hug and I was like, yes. So, and
Yeah.
I hugged her and she was crying and then I was crying. And it was that sense of there's nothing I can do for you except be here with you as a person
As
who
a
also
human.
has a
Yeah.
mom,
Yeah.
right? And who like
Yeah.
recognizes that I don't know what that feels like, but I know what it feels like to love my mother. And I can imagine what you're living through in this moment. And I can
Yeah.
offer you compassion.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we should have done my last episode together, because that's what I literally talked about, was like
Yeah.
empathy and just like how
Yeah.
just remembering the basics of
Yeah.
being a human being will
Yes.
help you
Ah,
in your
so
nursing
much.
career, because at the end of the day, and I love how you said you go into that room no matter the state of what the patient is
Right.
in, and you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
It's that person that may be dying, near death, unconscious, they're still a person,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
remembering that and treating them
Yeah.
that way and maintaining dignity for yourself and for the patient
Right.
is so important.
Yeah.
We get off topic, don't we?
Just a little bit here and there, but
But
only every time we talk.
it all comes full circle. No, but I feel like
Yeah.
I love this little tangent because I think it kinda ties this all together and
Yeah.
the fun things, but how
Right.
the fun truly impacts the everyday
Right.
of what we do,
Yeah.
and, I think, oh gosh, I can't wait for you to get here because
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
coming here,
I am. I'm coming back.
and
Yeah.
I'll get to meet you in person.
Yeah. Oh, that's gonna be so. I
Yeah.
can't wait for that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've covered so much. Is there anything that you want to just the piece of advice that we didn't get to? Is there anything just hot on your mind that you want to get off or just give to someone else? What do you
I would say just wherever a person is at, because we've talked about all these different, I mean, as with nursing and or whether you're a nurse or not, we're all humans, and it's hard. It's hard to be a human. It's hard to be a human in this world. So just kind of offering yourself as much grace as possible. Sometimes taking, you can take a risk. Sometimes it's rest. Sometimes the biggest risk is saying no to everything for like a week and being like, I literally just need to nap every day. I'm exhausted. Right. So I think just kind of finding what feels true for wherever anybody is, and then really just following that. And I don't know. I think I would say that I've done a lot of things, and I feel like, um, just don't be afraid of it, like not working out. I had this whole thing for such a long time of what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? And I've never gone anywhere or done anything that hasn't left me with so much just self-awareness and self-insight. Even the things that I thought were going to go one way and they went another way, there's really no getting it wrong is how I feel. Like I want to there's no getting it wrong. We're just living, there's no manual. If you feel like you skipped class on the day that the life handbook got passed out, I felt that all my, like, is there a manual that everybody has that I don't have? There's no manual, but there is that little inner part of you that kind of knows like, oh, maybe I'll go this way. Maybe I'll go that way. Maybe I need a nap. And I'd just say kind of listening to that guidance.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that, and that goes back to the risk taking and
Yeah.
it's no bad
There's,
risk.
yeah. Yeah. There's just nothing,
Yeah.
something. Oh, there is one quote that I loved that I wrote down because
Yes.
one of my friends, when I moved to New York, because New York was, I mean, it's a scary place, right? It's a beautiful place, but I was scared of it, for good reason, for like, oh, what if because I don't know anyone here. And so I moved here last year as a travel nurse by myself, and he sent me this beautiful quote. I don't have the whole thing, but I wrote this part down, and it became kind of this guiding compass of, if you get a chance, take it. If it changes your life, let it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Laurel, thank you so much.
Oh,
This
thank
has
you,
been
Anne.
this has been so wonderful. I
Yeah.
can't wait for you to get your butt over here to San
Yes.
Diego and I can meet you, and safe travels. Safe
Thank
travels.
you so much. Yes.
Thank you for tuning in to Nursing Uncharted. You can learn more about this episode and our show on our website at amnhealthcare.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find show updates and Nursing Uncharted opportunities on our Instagram at AMN Allied. Special thanks to AMN Healthcare for making this show possible. See you next time.